The coronavirus pandemic caught the world off guard. More than 7 million people worldwide have been infected since the first case was reported in China last year. Now, a group of scientists have assessed South Africa's management of the virus. Let's get more insight from the CEO of Sanpat, Dr. Anshu Padayachi. Doc, thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk first about the research. Your 13 local scientists and experts wanted to explore what level of policy preparedness, we're talking about policies here, what did they find?
Well, thank you for that, Tony. I'm actually the CEO of the South African Technology Network, which is a consortium of technology-focused universities and not SANPAD. Yes, the 13 of us got together to look at particularly how well we've done now, but more importantly, what will the challenges be for the future? And I think that is the bigger challenge that we're going to have to face. Thus far, compared to our BRICS partners and, of course, Europe and the US, I think South Africa, having had the lockdown pretty early and having dealt with the disease, from experience from other countries, we've done very well. However, there's still a lot to come. But I think the bigger challenge for us is how we restore, how we revive the economy and how we get going post the pandemic. And that is what this paper looked at. And we looked at it from both the human rights perspective, the ethics perspective, and how we're going to revitalize this economy and get people working, but get people working in different jobs and looking at innovation, etc.
So where are the gaps when it comes to, in terms of policy and regulations? What can we do?
Well, there've been, well, as you know, I think there have been areas that we've neglected for a long time since democracy. And I think some of the successes that we've had now, people responded so promptly to behavior change once the lockdown was initiated. And of course, we had to rush to get sanitation, housing, healthcare facilities needed to be put into place, things that we weren't prepared for. And I think this is one of the pluses, but how we sustain this in the future, how we're going to build on this is what needs to be carefully planned now. And we've challenged government in particular to set up what we call a think tank of experts. And we have experts in this country, human rights activists, human rights experts. We have on our team, as you know, the past UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. We have Accord, an organization that deals with post-conflict challenges, etc. And I think there's a lot more that we have to do in order to get this country working and working quickly rather than falling into another abyss where it's going to take us a long time to recover. But more importantly, I think just listening to the minister recently, Minister of Finance, talking about zero-based budgeting, all of that, responds to what we are talking about, to priority setting priorities. What are the priorities in the country? How are we going to manage these priorities? How are we going to put them into place? Who's going to drive this? And governance and leadership is what we're looking at in particular.
That's true, because when you look at, you say you were pleased by the Minister of Finance, the way he's looking at things and how we can go forward. But the Minister of Finance must be backed by the executive. It needs to be backed by Parliament in order to, everything that we're talking about going to the future must become policy. Ultimately, do you see that really happening?
Well, that has to happen. We have no alternative. And how we do that is for government to form these social compacts with universities of technology who have been excellent during this time, producing masks, prototypes for new ventilators, and lots of other innovations. But I think now's the time. We can't wait too long. We've got to do it now. We've got to ensure that we have this think tank, have this database, and this groups of experts who will assist government. And it's an offer we make to government. We wait for government to respond to some of these recommendations that we make in this position paper.
In your paper, I'm curious because you also mentioned the potential for human rights violations. Talk to me about that.
Yes. In fact, that is going to be one of the big challenges. And I know that whilst we had lockdown and prevented people from movement, etc., blocked borders, etc., we have to be very careful that this does not in any way violate the human rights of people. So it's a balancing act, and one has to be very ethical in the way one does this. So it's about protecting the citizenry, but at the same time ensuring that we manage this pandemic in the way it ought to be managed and prevent it from spreading further or causing even more devastation than currently exists.
And Doc, when we talk about the inequalities which you refer to in your paper as well, I'm sure you do know there's one side of society is going to say, hang on a second, you know what, that we're fine with the way things have been, while the other side of society is saying, hey, hang on a second, we need to equalize everything here, whether it's small businesses to large enterprises and so forth.
Yeah, precisely. In fact, that's one of the major issues we raise. In fact, this pandemic has raised the ugly head of poverty and inequality in the country. And I think now is the time for government to intervene, to ensure that all of those discrepancies that existed, such as housing, sanitation, schools, education, and so forth, are now equalized, or at least start to build on these and not lose this opportunity. I think also the informal economy, we talk about the circular economy and waste management and climate change, all of those things. This is an opportune moment for us to make those changes. If we lose the impetus now, it will be lost forever. So we are challenging government. We are asking, we're requesting, we're saying, here's an opportunity for government to engage with the experts in the country and talk to us and look at some of the recommendations that we make in this paper so that we could restore and revitalize this country sooner rather than later.
Doc, just a quick one for me. Have you started engaging with government yet in terms of your recommendations?
Well, we've submitted our paper. We've submitted the position paper to the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation and to various other arms of government, and we are waiting a response. And we look forward to that response, to engaging with them.
Thank you so much for chatting with us this morning, Doctor. That's Dr. Ansu Padayachi. She's talking to us about the position paper, which was prepared by 13 scientists assembled by the South African Technology Network, SATN.